Ryan Glover. This video is about Craig Mack. Rolling Stone just released an article that Craig Mack had died of HIV and it was untreated. You know, a lot of people may remember that he had basically joined a cult called the Overcomer Ministry, and they didn't believe in getting medical treatment. You know, obviously HIV is treatable. He could have gotten treatment for it, but I guess they believed that God would heal him. And isn't it ironic? The leader and the founder of the Overcomer Ministry, Brother Stare, actually has some sexual assault allegations, pedophilia, and having dealt with Diddy. It seems like he went to one sexual abuser to another, and he had a very contemptuous relationship with Diddy. Some may remember the song Flavor in Your Ear. But Craig Mack, when he was on Bad Boy, he was constantly dealing with money issues, and also he didn't have a good relationship with Diddy. Diddy often would criticize Craig Mack about the clothes that he wore, criticism about his verses. Craig Mack also didn't like that Diddy was taking on a role as a music artist, and he was showing up in the music videos. Craig Mack also didn't have a good relationship with Biggie. As you remember, Biggie dissed Craig Mack. He got more Mack than Craig. So I think the Rolling Stone article, is that really journalism? Someone's private life, their medical information, their HIPAA. There's laws around that, Health Information Protective Privacy Act. I feel is that really relevant information? But I don't think necessarily is shocking. I think a lot of times you hear these celebrities where they've died at relatively young ages. Craig Mack was obviously very young in comparison to an age where people do pass away. I think anyone under 60 that passes away seems that is a little premature death. But at the end of the day, Craig Mack, he lived a very difficult life, obviously, and he had a lot of resentment towards the end, towards Diddy. He didn't even want Bad Boy to pay for any of the funeral that much. You know how bad that you have to despise people that you tell as far as the cult that you're in, is you don't want a former record label to even pay anything for the funeral. Another victim that was harmed by Diddy. And you can't help but wonder after all these stories that have come out about Diddy and how he abused people sexually, taking advantage of them. Craig Mack was probably one of his earliest victims, and basically the person who helped launch Bad Boy, with the Flavor in Your Ear song, which was a huge song and propelled the label to eventually be able to do what it became, where it became the home that Biggie had built. He didn't really get his just due, man. I think it's very disappointing because a lot of times people focus on the superstardom aspect of music, and some people get the opportunity to live out their dreams and get all the money, as Diddy before these allegations had surfaced. I think he was a representation of the American dream, but he built his back of his label on the work of talented artists where he stepped on them. And Craig Mack died in poverty, and I think that's very disappointing, for somebody who helped start one of the best known labels in hip-hop. So it's really disappointing and sad story, that he had HIV. I don't think that's any shame, but I wonder, about the journalistic integrity of Rolling Stone reporting on that. is there really any relevance of like, you know, because what does that have to do with like, you know, music? Or like, you know, do you feel like that's something that people should be talking about, like, you know, people's personal medical information? I feel like back in the day, it was just certain things that the press didn't cover. It seems like now, like, you know, everybody needs to know everything about like people's personal lives, and it's intrusive. I love Rolling Stone. I feel that they do really good articles, and they have like, you know, some really good stories about Craig Mack, and they talk about like, you know, just as far as like how he became part of the Overcomer Ministry. And the guy who's the founder of the Overcomer Ministry, man, he just seems like straight weirdo. Held this girl's breast. There was a minor on YouTube, like, you know, it's a video that you can see. And for like, you know, Craig Mack, like, you know, to go from like, you know, being a superstar hip hop artist to being in a cult that, like, you know, isn't like, you know, anything like, you know, righteous. I think like, you know, if you're going to do like religion, there's nothing wrong with that. But like, you know, being in something where they're not like, you know, interested in evangelizing and teaching like, you know, the actual Bible or living righteously, but like, you know, they're taking advantage of people because they really don't have any other options. And that's what happened to Craig Mack. And like, you know, I think is very disappointing, because Craig Mack was a talented artist, and it seems like Diddy like pretty much blackballed his chances, like, you know, for having success in the music industry. I think like I read, like, you know, it was a possibility that he could have signed to Death Row at one point, you know, to Suge Knight, but like that didn't happen. Like, you know, Diddy was like, you know, really upset, and then like Diddy had like, you know, made difficulties like where he was going to get money if like, you know, Craig Mack left the label and signed to another label, and just like put up obstacles in his way. And I think like, you know, things like that in the music industry are like, you know, kind of like what's untold, where like, you know, people like, you know, ruin people's lives and like, you know, go on to have like, you know, really great lives. Like, you know, Diddy wasn't affected by like, you know, the negativity that he's done. He's just kind of like, you know, reaping the benefits of like wealth that he's built on the backs of other people. And I think like, you know, it's kind of like disgusting. It's like, you know, when will he actually like, you know, be charged criminally and suffer for like, you know, the sins that he's done, you know, the way that he's made like people like Craig Mack suffer in life. And I think like, you know, that one day, like, you know, we'll all have to like, you know, get justice. We all like, you know, sow what we reap. But like, you know, it's just like really difficult when you see like a talented artist like Craig Mack, and the way like, you know, being treated by like someone as evil as Diddy led to like, you know, his life, the way it came about. Like maybe if he had been treated fairly by Diddy, like, you know, maybe he could have ended up on another label and like, you know, continued to be an artist, you know, even continue to be in a regular church where you're not so desperate. I think like, you know, people reach a point of desperation when they have no one else, no one to help them or no one to like, you know, support them. And then people who can take advantage, like cults. I don't think anyone joins a cult because like, you know, it's their first option. But like, you know, when like, you know, you need people and the people who were supposed to treat you right don't. Such as the case of Diddy, where he took advantage and he exploited artists. He has a history of that. You know, we could talk about like, you know, all of the artists that he supported, he's extorted on the label and exploited. But Craig Mack deserved better. I think he was an incredible artist. And, you know, regardless of the fact, you know, that he died of HIV, that doesn't change anything. And I think that people and journalists should be like, you know, a little bit more respectful of like the things that they cover in the media, like people's health and information privacy act. Like, you know, information should be sacred, and it doesn't really matter the fact that he died of HIV. Is kind of a way to like destroy his legacy and make him look bad, as opposed to focusing on the real story and the fact that, you know, Diddy is a monster, and the things that he did to artists and exploited them, you know, shouldn't go unpunished, and that he really needs to face consequences for this.